Welcome back, everybody, for another dip dive. Today, we're tackling a topic that I think is really important for a lot of families out there. We're talking about the challenges faced by autistic mothers who are also experiencing postpartum depression.
Yeah,
So it's sort of like the intersection of these two experiences.
absolutely.
And the source material that we're looking at today is an article from Cheap ABA, and it's called Autism and Postpartum Depression, a guide for autistic mothers.
Right.
And this is, this is really crucial for understanding what these mothers go through. So let's dive into this.
Yeah, definitely. It's not always easy to talk about,
Mm.
but it's so important to understand
What is?
these experiences and how they can really make things difficult.
So to start off, could you just walk us through what exactly is postpartum depression, or PPD, as it's often called? It's more than just the baby blues, right?
Right, exactly. A lot of new moms experience what we call the baby blues, where they have some mood swings and they feel a little overwhelmed. But PPD is much more intense than that. It's really classified as a mood disorder,
Hmm.
and it's marked by persistent sadness and, feelings of hopelessness
Hmm.
and anxiety that just doesn't go away.
Hmm.
And it can manifest in a lot of different ways. Some women experience extreme fatigue, changes in their appetite and sleep, even losing interest in the things that they used to love.
Wow.
And, in more severe cases, there can even be thoughts of self-harm
Hmm.
or even harming the baby.
So that's obviously very serious. That's a lot to deal with on top of just the normal challenges of caring for a newborn. So how does autism come into play here?
Well, autism itself doesn't directly cause PPD, but it can significantly impact how a mother experiences it.
Yeah.
You have to remember that. Many autistic individuals
Hmm.
already navigate a world that's not always built for them.
Right.
You know, sensory input can be overwhelming, social expectations can be confusing, and executive functioning, which is critical for planning and task switching.
Hmm.
Those things might be different.
Right. So they're already sort of coming at this from a different perspective with
Yeah.
a different set of challenges
Bumps
that
again.
most new mothers might not have to face.
Absolutely.
And the article goes on to talk about 3 specific areas where these pre-existing challenges can make PPD a lot harder for autistic mothers. And the first one that really jumped out at me was this idea of social anxiety and isolation.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge factor. Motherhood brings this wave of social pressures. There's the pressure of connecting with your baby in ways that, society kind of expects you to. And then handling all the visits from well-meaning family and friends and even just interacting with healthcare providers.
Right.
These are all things that, can be incredibly draining
Yeah.
for anyone, really. But for someone with social anxiety, it can be crippling.
Yeah, I hadn't even considered the pressure to connect with the baby
Right.
in a specific way.
Yeah.
That must be tough.
Oh, absolutely. And you have to remember that you're also dealing with hormonal changes, sleep deprivation, the constant demands of a newborn. It's just so easy to see how this can lead to, feelings of isolation and loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
which ultimately just make those PPD symptoms even worse.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it seems like this would naturally lead into the second area highlighted in the article, which is sensory sensitivities. You were talking before about how sensory input can be really difficult for autistic individuals. So how does that play out when you bring a newborn into the picture?
So just imagine you're an autistic mom.
Mm-hmm.
You already have heightened sensory sensitivities. Now you bring a newborn into the picture. It's already an intense sensory environment, right? You've got the constant crying. The baby needs to be held all the time. There's smells. There's an unpredictable schedule. And all of that is magnified for an autistic mom. It can be completely overwhelming.
Yeah, so it's like a constant sensory overload on top of everything else that we've already talked about.
Exactly.
It just adds to the stress.
It really does. And, this overload can really affect everything. It can make it harder to bond with the baby. It can increase your anxiety and stress. And it just makes it so much harder to cope with. Those other symptoms of PPD that we were talking about?
It sounds like a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it really is.
And the article also mentioned executive functioning challenges, which, when you think about everything that's involved in caring for a newborn, executive function seems like it would be pretty crucial.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When we talk about executive function, we're talking about things like planning, organization, time management, being able to think flexibly. These are all things that are essential for anyone with a newborn. But, we know that many autistic individuals face challenges in these areas.
Right.
So, imagine struggling to create a feeding schedule, keep track of all those doctor's appointments, manage your own needs while you're also caring for this baby, all while you're sleep deprived and emotionally drained.
Yeah. even basic tasks would feel monumental.
Exactly.
And then you probably start feeling overwhelmed and inadequate,
Right.
which just adds to the depression.
You hit the nail on the head. It really is a perfect storm of challenges for autistic mothers who are experiencing PPD.
Yeah.
And it's crucial that we understand just how difficult this experience can be.
Yeah, it's not something to be taken lightly. And it's easy to feel helpless when you're faced with something so complex. But thankfully, the article doesn't just outline the difficulties. It actually offers some real practical strategies for navigating this really challenging period.
It does. And that's what's so important about this article. Because it's not just about raising awareness, it's also about empowering these mothers to take control of their well-being.
So what are some of the strategies that it highlights?
One of the most crucial ones is building a supportive network. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about having people around. It's about surrounding yourself with individuals who truly understand the unique challenges of being an autistic mother with PPD.
So we're talking about family and friends who get it, healthcare providers who are informed and sensitive to their needs.
Exactly. That sense of being heard and understood can make all the difference in the world. And beyond emotional support, practical help is also crucial. Having someone who can step in, help with the household chores, offer a break from childcare, or simply just listen without judgment. Those things can be invaluable.
Yeah, it's like you need a team, not just a cheering section.
Exactly.
The article also emphasizes self-care, which when you're already so overwhelmed, seems almost counterintuitive. But I can see how it would be incredibly crucial.
Oh, it's absolutely essential. Taking time for yourself, even if it's just for a few minutes each day, can help you manage that stress.
Yeah.
And recharge your batteries. And self-care can look like so many different things. It could be taking a warm bath, going for a walk in nature, listening to your favorite music, or engaging in a hobby that brings you joy.
Right. Even something as simple as a cup of tea in a quiet room
Absolutely.
can make a world of difference.
It really can.
And this ties into the next strategy that the article talks about, which is open communication with your healthcare provider. And why is that so important?
Well, it's crucial to be upfront with your doctor about, your experience with autism and PPD. The more they understand your unique needs, the better they can tailor a treatment plan that works for you.
Right. So it's really about having a partnership with your doctor, not just being told what to do.
Exactly. It's about empowering you
Yeah.
to be an active participant in your own care.
I like that.
And then in terms of practical tools, the article mentioned something that I think is really fascinating, assistive technology.
Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have immediately thought of technology in this context,
Right.
but I can definitely see how it could be helpful.
Yeah, think about it. There are apps for scheduling, setting reminders, creating to-do lists, even apps that can help you manage sensory input. Wow. These tools can really take a lot of the mental load off, which is especially helpful for those who struggle with executive functioning challenges.
It's like having a digital assistant for managing daily life, which
Yeah.
when you're sleep deprived and your brain just isn't working at its best, that could be really valuable.
Absolutely. And then there's the last strategy highlighted in the article, which is creating a sensory-friendly environment.
I'm curious about this one. This sounds like a way to, make your surroundings work for you instead of against you.
Precisely. It's all about minimizing sensory overload by adapting your environment to your needs. So this could mean, adjusting the lighting to create a calmer atmosphere, minimizing noise levels, or even just having designated quiet spaces within your home.
It's like reclaiming your space
Yeah.
and making it a haven where
Exactly.
you can feel safe and comfortable.
Exactly.
I love that.
And what's amazing about all of these strategies is that they really work in conjunction with each other. Building a support network,
Yeah.
prioritizing self-care, having that open communication with a healthcare provider, utilizing assistive technology, creating a sensory-friendly environment. It's a really holistic approach that addresses both the emotional and practical aspects of PPD for autistic mothers.
I like that it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving.
Exactly.
And the article also mentions some resources
It
for
does.
autistic mothers experiencing PPD. What are some of those?
So they highlight three main organizations: the National Alliance on Mental Illness, or NAMI, Autism Speaks, and Postpartum Support International, which is also known as PSI.
Okay. Could you give us a little bit more information on what each of these organizations offers?
Sure. So NAMI is a great resource for all things mental health. They offer support groups, educational materials, and they even advocate for policies that improve the lives of those affected by mental illness, including PPD.
Okay. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for information and support.
Exactly.
And what about Autism Speaks?
Well, Autism Speaks, as you might guess,
Yeah.
is focused specifically on autism. They provide a wealth of information and resources for individuals on the spectrum and their families, and they even have a section that's dedicated to postpartum depression and autism.
Oh, wow. That's great. And then there's PSI, which sounds like it would be a good resource for any new mother struggling with mood or anxiety
Yeah,
disorders.
you're right. PSI focuses on perinatal mood and anxiety disorders,
Hmm.
and they offer a ton of information and resources as well, including support groups, online forums, and they even have a helpline.
So there really are a lot of organizations dedicated to supporting mothers through these
I
challenges.
really are.
And I think just as important as knowing that these resources exist is remembering that reaching out for help is a sign of strength, not weakness.
Absolutely.
It's a step towards taking care of yourself
Uh,
and getting the support that you deserve.
couldn't agree more.
And speaking of seeking support, the article also emphasized the importance of
Yeah.
educating partners, families,
Yeah.
and healthcare providers
Hmm.
about the unique needs of autistic mothers experiencing PPD.
Right.
Why is that so important?
Well, it's absolutely critical. We can't expect people to provide effective support if they don't understand what those needs are in the first place.
Mm.
So education is key. And thankfully, there are tons of resources available, online
Yeah.
through organizations like the ones that we just discussed, and even in books and documentaries.
Yeah. I can see how a lack of understanding could create unintentional barriers to support.
Absolutely.
So what are some practical steps that partners, families, and healthcare providers can take to offer better support?
Well, I think it all starts with active listening.
Mm.
Don't dismiss their feelings or try to offer unsolicited advice. Just listen with empathy and validate their experience. Simple things like saying, "That sounds incredibly tough. I can see why you're feeling overwhelmed," can make a world of difference.
Yeah, it's so easy to jump into fix-it mode.
It is.
But sometimes just holding space for someone's struggles is the most helpful thing you can do.
Absolutely.
And beyond listening, what about practical support?
Yeah, practical help is huge. Offer to help with everyday tasks like cooking, cleaning, running errands, even just holding the baby for an hour so mom can take a nap or a shower can be a huge relief.
It's all about easing the burden in any way you can.
Exactly.
Even in small ways.
Even in small ways.
And when it comes to healthcare providers, what can they do to be more supportive?
Well, I think for healthcare providers, it's really important to be aware of the patient's autism.
Mm-hmm.
And that might mean adjusting their communication styles to be more direct, minimizing sensory overload during examinations,
Yeah.
and just being patient with their needs.
Right. It's about creating that safe and comfortable environment
Yeah.
where the mother feels heard, respected,
Mm-hmm.
and understood.
Exactly.
And so much of this seems to come back to communication, not just between the mother and her support system, but within the autistic community itself.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, open communication within the autistic community can help break down stigma, it can help people share their experiences, and it can really create a sense of solidarity. It's about saying, you're not alone in this.
Right. And that's so powerful
It is.
to be able to connect with others who understand your experience.
I'm so-
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive, what's the one most important takeaway that you want our listeners to remember?
If I had to boil it down to one key takeaway, it's that autistic mothers experiencing postpartum depression are not alone. There is help available. There are people who understand. And there is hope for a brighter future.
That's such an important message.
It is.
It's not about pretending these challenges don't exist. It's about acknowledging them and providing the support that's needed.
Exactly.
And we've only just scratched the surface of this really complex topic.
Absolutely. There's so much more to explore.
So for those who want to dive deeper, where would you recommend they go?
Well, I highly recommend checking out the resources that were mentioned in the article. NAMI, Autism Speaks, and Postpartum Support International. They're fantastic resources for information, support, and connection.
Perfect. And we'll be sure to include links to those resources in the show notes. As we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've talked a lot about individual challenges and support systems, but what about the bigger picture? How can we as a society create a more welcoming and inclusive environment for autistic mothers?
That's a great question. I think it starts with awareness. We need to educate ourselves about autism, challenge our own assumptions, and be mindful of the diverse ways that people experience the world.
It's about moving beyond stereotypes and embracing the unique strengths and perspectives that autistic individuals bring to the table.
Exactly.
Imagine a world where autistic mothers feel comfortable seeking help without fear of judgment, where their needs are understood and accommodated, and where they're celebrated for their resilience and the incredible job that they're doing.
That's a world worth striving for.
It is a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and supported.
Absolutely.
And that's something that we can all contribute to in both big and small ways. So let's end this deep dive with a call to action. Let's commit to learning, listening, and advocating for a world that embraces neurodiversity in all its forms.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for taking the time to dive deep with us. Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those critical conversations going.
Yeah, it really